Welcome back, folks. It's Rick Maki here, just coming on again to do another session on near-death experiences and its similarities to mediumship. And we're going to cover all kinds of different topics, and I'll give it a run through in just a second. But as I do on all my shows, I like to kind of show what to do if you want to join the conversation. So if you want to come onto the show, I typically will walk you through the steps on how to do that first. So let's go ahead and do that. I gotta find my my browser, and let me bring in the right view here. Windows capture. It's gonna be try this here. That's the one. Yeah. That doesn't look right, though. Oh, there it goes. All right. Excellent. All right, so on the Facebook has this issue, unfortunately, when you are in the main chat. So for when I'm doing the show and I need to see who's talking, in order to know who's coming in from Facebook, there's this one little thing you have to do. If you look in the comments section of tonight's live, there's a little link you can click right down here. Right here, you just click on this link, and then you basically just do a pass-through. It's just like a sign-in kind of thing. You just click a link, and that allows me to see who's coming in the chat from the main, administration section. So right here is, if you want to join the show, this will bring you into the studio, and it'll put you on hold, and I'll be able to see that. So if you do want to come in and make this more of a conversation, that's the goal of the show, is to eventually do that. But so far I've been doing that solo for the most part. I historically had guests on more frequently, but with my schedule and everything, it's hard to coordinate all that. So what I'm trying to do is a little more ad hoc, bring people in as I can. So let's get on with the show and into the topic of near-death experiences and its correlation to mediumship. All right. So some of the things we're going to talk about tonight are core elements of near-death experiences, like, we'll talk about out-of-body experiences, the awareness of having out-of-body experiences, life reviews. Some people will see Jesus, Buddha, all the different concepts, the cultural, religious interpretations of near-death experiences, because that's very profound for different people that have different faiths. Common lessons from near-death experiences, parallels with mediumship. There's a lot of parallels between the work that mediums do and these near-death experiences. So they do describe a lot of the same lesson type things, like they're delivering a message and it has something to do with that person's personal development or the lessons they need to learn in this life. Oftentimes a reading isn't just about connecting with spirit, it sometimes is about lessons and other things. And then we're going to bridge the two worlds a little bit. We're going to try to do that, and then contact the sources and narratives that are out there. So there's a lot of fake channels out there that try to, push a narrative. Let's say, and I hate to say, a lot of it tends to be Christian based. They create these fake channels and they try to push their narrative. The mediumship stuff is evil. Anything esoteric or outside the box of religion is bad. So. And that's not Christianity exclusively, but it just seems to be a little bit more prevalent in that arena. So the next thing we'll talk about are some key definitions that tend to come through on these readings, and then hopefully at the end we'll have a little bit of a group discussion. So let me just see if anyone's popping in the live right now. Let's see if we got one in there. If you want to go ahead and throw in any questions or anything as we're going through, I'll try to keep an eye on that as I'm going through this so that I don't miss anything. But let me bring up the Facebook feed so that I can keep an eye on that directly before I get started. And then the YouTube, we're on YouTube and Facebook tonight. Normally I'll be streaming to multiple platforms, but right now I'm just limiting it to the 2, and then I'll upload later. Sorry, I have to do the technical stuff and the actual show at the same time. It's a lot of fun sometimes. So I got a brand new laptop. It's a little bit faster. It's quicker to set up. All I have to do is turn things on and configure a couple things to get it started. Whereas before, I used to fight with my computer. It was constantly freezing and having all kinds of problems. And hopefully now I'll be able to do this a little bit more frequently. I'll feel like doing it a little bit more frequently because I have a piece of equipment that actually is cooperating with me a little bit more. All right, without further ado, let's get into the core elements of NDEs, out-of-body awareness, sometimes abbreviated as OOBE or OBE. People report oftentimes when they're having these near-death experiences, they talk about like floating above their bodies, observing surgeons, conversations that might have happened in the waiting room with family members, different things like that. Details that, that the victim of the near-death experience, I don't want to say victim, the experiencer, we'll just call it the experiencer. These are things that they should not be aware of, because oftentimes either don't have any brain activity, supposedly they passed away, so they have no brain activity, and the things that are happening outside the room, there's no possible way that they would know that. So famous examples include Pam Reynolds' story, the case where their surgical details have been reported during the procedure. This kind of verifiable memory is one of the strongest imperial puzzles. You can research that. Her name is Pam Reynolds. And why it mattered. Why does that matter? If the perception occurred during periods of negligible brain activity, it challenges the strictest materialist explanations. So I knew a guy who was in a coma for 2 years, and they thought, he was brain dead, everything, and there was nothing going on up there. But it turns out he ended up coming to after 2 years, because in fact they were thinking about pulling the plug on him, but they decided, the family decided to just keep him on life support, since everything, all the rest of the body seemed to be intact. They just weren't willing to let go and just sort of pull the plug. So they kept it going that long, and because there were glimpses of brain activity, I think, like at moments, but then the majority of the time, 99.9% of the time, there was nothing going on. So he recalls conversations, being outside the body, being around family, even outside of the hospital, not just in the hospital, all kinds of interesting things like that. So that's more of an extreme version of a near-death experience, right? When you're in a coma, some things they remember, some things they don't remember, but they come back with a lot of detail that is just irrefutable. So we'll get into some of the channels that I recommend you take a look at, because for me to say all this, and this is just, I'm sharing with you how I feel about this, but everyone should really go out and do their own research and kind of figure it out for themselves. Like, how do you feel about this kind of thing? And try to put religious dogma aside for a second, because when I say dogma, that doesn't sit well with a lot of people. But I feel like there are aspects of religion, if we look at the core of it, of all positive focused religions, minus the S word, if you will, because you can't say certain things on social media and not get banned. So we'll call it the S word. I think we all know what we're talking about. Anything that's positive at the core of it has a general philosophy that everyone can kind of agree on. I think, there are certain principles, like obviously the 10 Commandments is obvious to most people. You shouldn't, do any of those things and have a good life. But outside of that, there's aspects of religion where it's story-based and it's subjective, right? So kind of leave a little bit of play there when it comes to this stuff. And if you're strong enough in your heart and you listen to your heart and you get signs from God that it is okay, that it is safe, you start to explore this stuff, you'll get the feel for it. At first, your programming is going to make you fearful and make you shy away from looking into anything like this, because they train you from a young age that this is evil, this is bad, it's not good for you. And or you'll go to hell if you try to look into something that comes to us naturally. There are people who don't grow up with a religion that practice mediumship and different things, and they don't know where it comes from. There are people in Christianity who, the system has ordained as speaking to God instead, and getting the same channeled messages that a medium would get typically. Names, dates, situations, things that have happened, family members who have passed on, or communicating through them. But they're saying it's God relaying the message, so therefore it's sanctioned and it's okay, right? That's where it gets crazy, right? So you kind of, and they're cashing in on it too, because they're charging money for you to go to see this guy. And I'm not going to say names, I'm not going to do anything like that, but I've been to all these things. I've been to some of these Christian, I don't know, they almost put them on a pedestal like they're gods themselves, and they are performing miracles on stage and healing people, and later on we find out it's all a scam. So you got to be careful of the things that I consider are dogma, these things that they use to bring in more money, or really, if you think about it, I'm not going to get into the whole discussion about the fact that Jesus didn't write the Bible. It was written by men many years later, assembled, adjusted, translated, whatever, throughout the years. So that's a whole other discussion. I think I've already had shows about that. But to stay on topic, one of the biggest things that happens in a near-death experience is when the person is on the other side, they have what's called a life review. So they go through something that's like, it's not just the good stuff, it's the bad stuff. It's everything. Like everything that you've ever done in your life, they say it's kind of like watching a movie, but watching it in a fast-forward motion. But yet you're able to comprehend it all. For some reason, while you're going through it, you're able to comprehend everything that's happening at the same time. And not only do you feel the joy, but you feel the pain of the experiences from the other person's perspective, from every single person. Not just the big things, but the little things matter, like holding the door for somebody, or being kind in general, and being thoughtful and helpful, and being of service in life. Like all those things seem to matter. And then there's the times when maybe you weren't very good, or you weren't feeling very good, and you didn't realize the impact you had on somebody else. When you were being grouchy that morning, or whatever it is, because you're focused in your own pain. That pain can butterfly out just like a joy would. Like joy is infectious, so is misery. So it's all in where we focus, and these are the things they review with a near-death experiencer, and they try to say, well, here's some more work that you might need to do, and they'll decide that they're going to send them back, or you get to choose. Actually, most of the time, most of the ones I've listened to, you get to choose whether you go back or not. But they will also remind you of things that you agreed to. Even though you don't remember it in that moment, they'll say, you agreed to go through XYZ, and even though it looks bad, this is all temporary. This is all a life. That's what life is all about. It's all about the lessons. Okay. Do I have that mic on? Jeez, I hope I do. Let me just see. I got to double check that. I can't tell sometimes if because that pause button did not work properly one time. Okay, so there we go. Let me just make sure the pause. All right, great. So that's the life review part of it. And then you know, as far as like, you know, what do you experience or who do you experience when you go to the other side? People have there's a broad spectrum of things that people experience depending upon their religious influence, different things. A lot of people could say, well, that's all happening in the mind, but I remember one specific near-death experience, not one specific, several of them, where they've actually had the presence of mind to ask Source or God or whatever was presented to them, why do some people see Jesus and some people see Buddha or, you know, other deities? And the answer is always, we show you what you're comfortable with or what you'll accept, because that's sort of, it's sort of not even that important because it's all one thing. That's always the message that kind of comes through with that. And then Jesus is sort of this figure because, you know, the Christian religion is so big and Jesus was this amazing person. So he's put forward in a different way, though, than what the Bible teaches. And there's a lot of things about forgiveness, and it doesn't necessarily matter. There's never a concept of hell unless it's usually leaning on the fake manufactured side. So we'll get into all that too, which is very interesting when you start to dig into this and you look at I've literally watched hundreds of these, if maybe more than 1,000, probably different over the years, you know, because I've always been interested in this kind of thing. So if you're going to take a consensus from all of that, I'm just talking about the trends that I see in the ones that I feel like at least they think what they're saying is true. Now, I've studied psychology, I've studied body language, so I can kind of tell if a person is being deceitful just through reading their body language. And it's hard to fake true emotion, you know, where you suddenly brought to tears, you see that energy. It's an energetic thing. So if you're an empath, you can pick up on the truth or the lies most of the time. So encounters with beings of light, guides or deities, right? Many report meeting a loving presence or multiple beings of light. Now, in past shows, I've talked about my experience of remembering before birth, being presented before beings of light, and having experiences with beings of light in this life as well. You can go to my website and check out my stories if you want to get into the details on that. But it's almost like this thing called angel is just a being of light. Sometimes they're depicted with wings if you're Christian or whatever. Other times they don't have wings. And in my life, the things that I've seen and experienced and remember are just pure beings of light that have a sort of silhouette of a human figure, but they're radiating this beautiful, brilliant, white, goldish light. So, cultural context steers the identity of the beings typically that people experience. So if you're a Christian, Christians often will say Jesus, but even with that, there's like a different interpretation than they were taught in their Christian teachings. So there's never this like punishment style thing going on in these reviews, which is amazing to me. And Hindus may see Yama or a messenger, some other kind of messenger. Buddhists may see Bodhisattvas. I don't even know how to pronounce that word very well. Indigenous people might see ancestors or spirits. Sometimes the figure is explicitly named like Jesus or others, and other times it's just they get a sense that it's Jesus, or they get a sense that it's a Buddhist, some kind of Hindu god or something like that. So they're just getting a sense sometimes. It's not like they were told it was this person. So there's a lot of different variation in what it is. But again, the message is always, it's really all one thing. We just show you what you're going to accept so that we can get on to the business of the lessons and focusing on that, because that's the most important thing that seems to happen in these experiences. When they talk about your life, they talk about how you're living your life, and a lot of revelation seems to happen going through that process. One of the biggest things about lessons is learning unconditional love and peace. Now, the term unconditional might seem a little bit off in some cases, because when we talk about unconditional love, it's like there are always not conditions, but like you have to love unconditionally, but you don't have to accept certain things in your life. Meaning you can say, well, this person or this situation is not on a level that I can live with or be around energetically, not have it affect me. So does that mean we pull back love? It can mean that you, in that moment, your heart shrinks a little, where, it goes into a self-protective mode, and you kind of pull back, and you don't feel that same pull that you used to feel. Does that mean you're not living unconditionally with that kind of love? No, it just means it's just changing its meaning for you. And sometimes you have to love at a distance. That doesn't mean... So that's where forgiveness comes in. And forgiveness is a form of unconditional love. And it's unconditional love for the person, even with their flaws and their problems and their narcissism or whatever it is. We have to forgive them for that, because everyone comes here playing a role, apparently, according to all these... If you're looking at all this stuff as reality and real experiences, we all have to play the skeptic a little bit, but there's just a massive amount of these experiences. They all correlate with one another. They all have the same common thread. So you have to just keep an open mind with that. So unconditional love and peace, frequently described as ineffable, more real than real. So the experience itself is indescribable most of the time. It's kind of like when I try to describe my remembrance of coming here and going through the white light and the tunnel and all that, and feeling the love of God and all of that experience. I don't know where that remembrance comes from, but it was always stuck with me, and you can't explain it. So these experiences are deeply transformative, and they also help you kind of navigate life's troubles and problems in a lot of ways. So many, after having the near-death experience, this is the coolest part, many survivors report lasting personality changes. So they could have totally have been this selfish, greedy, an almost evil person, and totally turned their life around, having the revelation that they were maybe going the wrong way, or not learning the lessons that they needed to learn, or that they're given a second chance, to live out their life in a different way, and given the option to come back in a lot of cases, where like I said, you can be presented with the option to come back, but sometimes it almost feels like they're forced back because they already agreed to something. But when you're in a process and you go to your near-death review and you realize, oh, I was on the wrong path, I need to go back. That's a whole different story, right? So that produces a whole different feel to the situation. So let me just see here. Boom, boom. Oh, I got to put a comment in here. Hold on for a second. Got to bring in some more. Highlight and followers. Okay. All right, just trying to beef up the viewership here. It doesn't matter so much that people are watching, but when I get more consistent with this, I'm hoping that my scheduling of it, I'll be able to do a pre-run and kind of advertise it before I start. But anyway, so let's see. So they come back with the personality changes. They have less fear, increased compassion, changed priorities. Like everything about their life seems to change. And oftentimes they'll get into whole different careers. Sometimes God will speak to them even after they come back from the near-death experience. And, that freaks people out a little bit, and that gets into like channeling and all that kind of stuff. Some people actually do come back as mediums when they never had those skills or situations before. Let's see. Barrier and point of no return. So there's like reported symbols, rivers, gates, walls of light. Often a message, it's not your time. So it's not like we're not letting you all the way into heaven. We're just going to give you a glimpse. And the glimpse is a lot because they say that there's so much love felt and so much peace and no more pain that they don't even want to come back a lot of the time. But they put up the wall so that you don't know everything when you come back. You don't really want that because you want the lessons and the review and all that part to kind of keep you back on track. The encounter, they say, is very intense. And it's very common in NDE reports. So, let's see what else. So, it heightens their consciousness and their timelessness. Sorry. They're not sort of worried about the future, worried about the past so much. They're kind of being a little bit more mindful in their lives. More heightened awareness of the meaning of life. Like there's a lot more meaning to your life when you come back from something like that. There's a lot more clarity. There's like an instant knowing of certain things that they didn't have before, which is pretty amazing. The after effects, like you said, changed values, less materialism. A lot of people, some of the people were so focused on the materialism and achieving success, and not really doing a lot with it, but lavishing their lives and sort of brandishing it about like it's some kind of a trophy, and to kind of build themselves up. Then the people with money will tend to take that wealth and redirect it to a mission-oriented thing, as opposed to like just wasting it or just having a good time with it. They have a huge decrease in death anxiety, obviously, because they've already been dead. They know what it's like. Now they know it's not this bad thing. There isn't this God sitting in a chair trying to judge you, saying, okay, you've got 10 demerits here and you've got 10 credits over here. You're kind of in the middle. We're going to send you to hell. No, that's not how it works. It's all about the lessons on both ends of that spectrum, and the positives and the negatives. That this is a life of experience. Some people actually have a concept that maybe God has fragmented itself and created all these souls to have an experience on this planet, but I don't think we're ever going to know that to that depth, even through near-death experiences, exactly what this whole life is about. But I think we can all agree that it's lessons-based in a lot of ways, that if we don't learn certain lessons, we're going to suffer, right? That's why they created terms like karma and whatnot. So with that, people also report having more empathy in general. And then getting into the mediumship sessions, they often produce the similar reconciling or forgiving messages. So if you have somebody who's passed on and they are learning their lessons on the other side, because oftentimes a person will come through that was horrible in this life, and you think, well, that person probably is in hell, right? Like if you believe what the religion is teaching you, they're like, well, how come that person's coming through? And then they come through not just as themselves and their quirky selves, but they come through with lessons, and they say, well, from this side, there's a whole new perspective. They see things totally different. And they apologize for, causing any sort of strife or harm towards others. And that's the whole point of a medium, is to kind of help bridge the gap. And I've seen so much healing happen through mediums. Like, I have a friend whose brother has passed away in his early 20s, I think it was, from a motorcycle accident. And he had been devastated for years, over this. And I finally, when I was going to do all these mediumship readings and these group readings and stuff, after a while, the messages were no longer for me, because I guess a lot of the things I had to reconcile with people who had passed on had already been done. So I was just there doing more research and being interested in the topic. And before you knew it, I was getting information and messages for other people, like my friend. So I tell him, he was a huge skeptic of this kind of stuff. At least he seemed to be at the time, growing up. But as adults, I presented this to him, and he seemed to be open enough to it after I showed him the recording and all of the facts that it pulled out. So it had, what happened to his brother, approximate age, all different kinds of things, the name, everything. So there was just facts that you would have to say, well, who would even know that, right? Because this is a group of 75 people. They're not going to memorize everybody's life and then try to read everybody that way, or have some kind of supercomputer behind the scenes. It doesn't work that way. You have to go and experience it for yourself. So then, the cultural and religious interpretations, right? Let's see. So it's common. All the core phenomenon that occurs with an NDE, with the love, the review, the guidance, all that stuff, appears across all cultures. So it doesn't matter what your religious label is or your religious figure. The messages are always the same. So that in and of itself should tell you there's a oneness there when it comes to God, right? And so some of the common figures, we'll get into that. Just got to keep an eye on the chat here just to see if there's anybody popping in, because I like to sort of put up messages when people show up. All right, so some of the common figures that you hear of, obviously, is Jesus and Christian angels. Sometimes it's just Christian angels and not Jesus. Sometimes it's Jesus, or an interpretation that it might be Jesus. It's a figure of some sort that they associate to their religion because that's what they're taught. And there's something called a bodhisattvas in the Buddhist religion, or the Buddhist philosophy, or however you want to say it. It's an enlightened being who delays final nirvana to help others. So they have their own kind of deities in that religion. And for Hindus, a lot of times it's Yama. Yama is like a Vedic or Hindu death deity associated with the dispensation of the dead. So they're kind of like, what do they call that figure there? Oh man, I can't remember. There's other religions that have similar kinds of deities that kind of help you cross over, if you will. You're brought to a certain place, and they help the death transfer to where they're supposed to be. But that's all religious based, so the expression of that is always different. And then other Hindu stories, you've got a Guptra. I can't see a lot of these words because I'm not Indian, okay? So give me a break. But the Yama is a easy one, so we'll stick with that for the Hindus. And then for Islamic, you've got the Azrael, the Malak, and the Almat. So there's several different ones that come through for the Islamic and Abrahamic lore, and a couple other different religions along that path. And then for Western classic imagery, you have a Charon, which is the ferryman, which is kind of like another deliverance of the spirit to the afterlife. So they're ferrying souls, they call them, ferrying. And then in Japanese culture, you have the kami and the shinigami and the kami. And they are, let's see, so they're the spirits and powers that are found in nature in general, and they're personified forces that can be helpful or neutral or harmful. It just depends on what's going on, because in life all things are for our good or for our lessons or for our learning. So some deities will shift roles depending upon what you need as a person, but those particular ones also help to deliver the spirit to the other side. Then indigenous cultures will have ancestors or nature spirits. Native American, they have their own set. And let's see. And sometimes there are unnamed luminous guides. So it's not always that it's a religious figure. It's not like that at all. In fact, most of the time it's nobody. It's no affiliation. And that shocks a lot of Christians, because they go to the other side and they don't see anybody. They don't even see a Jesus. They don't see anybody. So it just depends on, I guess, the individual, what they need, what God thinks they need. If religion was confusing for them, or they weren't quite sure about something, they probably would put that aside and let them kind of go in a different direction. Okay, so some of the common lessons and ethical themes that we find common in all of these NDEs is love as a core purpose in life. So if the purpose of life is, to learn lessons, the closer we get to love, the more we can learn in this life. And that's repeated across many testimonial collections and across all religions. It's the same message, that love is a core purpose. And this idea of oneness or interconnectedness, so all things being one. And that for a Christian is a little bit hard, because we're taught that everything's a hierarchy. Like, you have to go through the church, you have to go through your priest for confession, and whatever if you're Catholic. And that everything has a hierarchy up to Jesus and then up to God. So everything kind of isn't this oneness per se. It's like you're separate from God as opposed to being this one. So, but all the common message across all of them, whether you're Christian, whether you're Buddhist, whatever it is this idea of oneness, which is totally beautiful and amazing, as far as I'm concerned. So, boom. Okay, Yeah, so many describe the felt reality, the deeply felt reality that what you do to others, you do to yourself. So, and that's a very, very important lesson. That's the lesson of karma, right? That's strong in the Buddhism philosophy. Life has meaning, and micro acts matter. So it's not just the big stuff that we do. Like, we don't have to go out in life and think, well, in order to really have purpose in life, I have to do the big things, right? No, not necessarily. Like, the little things in life matter more than anything. So it's the micro acts of kindness, the small things that we do every day are emphasized in many life reviews. So most of them emphasize that, and they actually show how in the review they'll show a situation like, oh, you remember that time you held the door for this woman, and this is in an area where people just don't do that. Or you help them to their car, or you help them cross the street, or whatever it was. Like that small act of kindness, that little taking time out of your day to see somebody's in need and to do something for them. A lot of the times, those are the things that they talk about in those near-death experiences, and they'll give them, here's a case, here's a case, here's a case, here's a case, and when you add it all up, you realize, I'm leaning on the side of doing the right things in this life. So then the next one is no fear of death, widely reported, driving major life changes on the return. So when you get back, most people don't have any fear of death. What they have a fear of is obviously still the same things we all fear. It's like getting sick and not doing well, and suffering in some way. Or, you get back here and there is this aspect, well, it was beautiful there, it was amazing there, I don't have this fear of death, but life, when they do the comparison, it's like, well, I know I need to do this work, but they're not always happy about it. They're like, oh my gosh, this, I realize now that I'm a little bit far behind and I need to get caught up. So that happens a lot. It's just interesting when you actually go and you listen to all the stories and you see the common thread. You'll be amazed, actually. So one of the biggest lessons, so not just love and connectedness and oneness and doing good acts and all that kind of stuff. One of the biggest things is this idea of forgiveness in order to heal. Because let's face it, I mean, there's a lot of people walking around in life that are not healed because they are unwilling to forgive or unable to forgive for one reason or another. They hold that bitterness within themselves. They can't sort of just let go and let God guide their lives and just do the right thing, And sometimes, the people we need to forgive are the worst ones, the ones that have done the worst things in life. They've been horrible to people. They've been even the murderers, different things. I've seen court cases where people's sons have died. And because of their religious beliefs, they knew they had to go to the trial, stand witness to the sentencing. But then at the end, they asked if they could approach the defendant or the person going to jail for doing a murder. And if you watch that, and they stand up there, the father and the mother of the person who was killed, and they say, and they look them straight in the eye, and they say, "I forgive you," and that, they know that they played some kind of role for the lessons in this life, is no matter how hard they were, that they can stand up there, look them in the eye, and say they forgive them, and a murderer would break down. And a lot of times these are young kids. They're doing something stupid. They made a bad decision in a moment of rage or something. But to see that interaction, that's what true forgiveness is all about. This is the way Jesus forgave his persecutors when he was being nailed to the cross and having a dagger shoved into his side and different things like that. First saying to God, "Why have you forsaken me?" And then asking God to forgive those who were persecuting him. that's something we all need to be able to live up to. And that's what one of the biggest lessons we find in near-death experiences is to learn how to be that forgiving, because this life is temporary and everything in it's temporary. There isn't one thing that you can have the most perfect life one day and then have totally nothing the next day, but it's all for our good when it comes to learning lessons and learning to have compassion, because we have to suffer a little bit in order to have empathy and compassion for other people suffering. So yeah, let me just see what else we got here. If we got any watchers going, if you want to comment, you can throw comments in the chat. And if you want to come on to the live, you can click on that link in the text inside the chat there. And yeah, so if you want to come on the show and talk about some of this stuff, that'd be fantastic. But it's not required. So, forgiveness and healing, we covered that. Mission and service. So, a lot of people, when they return, they often feel called to do something of service, whether that's teaching or caregiving or social service or whatever it is. They often change their whole career. And some people, like I said, will come back with the gift of mediumship too, which is quite odd. That happens probably not all the time, but it happens probably a third of the time. I'd say they come back with some kind of either heightened intuition or some other thing, where they never had those experiences before, and they don't quite know what to do with it, or if that's part of a side effect of having a near-death experience or what it was. But so they come back with a feeling about service in some way. So now that we have some kind of an understanding or an overview of what happens in these near-death experiences and the common aspects of it, let's try to bridge the gap a little bit with the parallels with mediumship. Oh, is my video frozen now? Let me just see here. Okay, the recording got frozen a little bit. Well, I gotta keep an eye on the technology as I'm going through. I know it's annoying, but I gotta keep the ball rolling here. All right. Okay. Got that going there. All right, good. All right, so parallels with mediumship. The continuity of personality, right? So mediums often convey the deceased same mannerisms, the way they joke, what kind of jokes that they would do, personal details. They'll describe certain things about their physicality or their personality or whatever. They might just say, "Oh, this person was very flamboyant," or they're very argumentative, or whatever, or depressed a lot of the time, or always a joker and happy and partying or whatever. So they'll just come out with whatever their particular mannerisms are. And then what they do is they'll say, "Well, I'm still myself, but I'm a little bit more vibrant and aware." So let's say if they would joke at other people's expense, they kind of understand how that wasn't a good thing necessarily. So they have adjusted, but their core personality is still there, and that has to shine through so that people will understand that the person that the medium is connecting with is actually the person that they're hoping to connect to. And then there's the evidential. Well, you always want a medium that can be evidential, right? They can produce evidence, like the dates people die, the birth dates, the date of an accident, the things that happened to them, like if they knocked a tooth out, or they broke an arm, or they had certain organs fail at their death, or certain kinds of accidents and different things. They give all that evidence, and they just pile it on. They just got so many things that you just can't refute, so you come to believe that some of this has to be true, or at least they're tapping into some kind of information field that's giving them this information. So evidence and verification, so things that people can verify. Both phenomena include accounts that proponents argue are verifiable names, facts. Like I said, critics point to confabulation or post hoc matching. Good practice is to evaluate each claim carefully. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think if you are going to a well-known medium who has thousands of people coming to them every year, that's what you would focus on. Now, if you're going to go to some small shop, someplace, and you don't really know the person, and they don't say outwardly that they can produce evidential information, facts and things that people would not know about the subject, then I wouldn't necessarily entertain that. What's the point, right? Why not just go for the best if you can do it? There are some people that are psychic and not necessarily mediums that can pick up on trajectory in your life and different things and kind of help you do that. But they act more like counselors in a way, but they pick up on spiritual things in your life intuitively. I'm not sure exactly how that works. I don't tend to do too much of that myself personally, because I figure the saying is that all mediums are psychics, but not all psychics are mediums, right? So if a medium can produce evidential information of communication to the other side, to me that's proof enough that whatever they're getting is coming from a place that it needs to come from, so that we can learn from it. Whereas a average everyday psychic, you don't really know if they're just reading, what do they call that, doing cold reading, or just sort of reading your facial expressions, different things, and asking questions and probing. And once they get into that, you kind of know it's a little scammy, right? So you got to be careful with that. Symbolic communication happens a lot of the time. So someone might describe an object, a watch, an article of clothing, a hat, or something that you used to do as kids, or flowers. Like, for example, if somebody always got their wife flowers, and it was a certain kind of flower, and that comes through in the mediumship reading, then it's an absolute. There's no way that they're faking it. Let's see. So that's useful for people, to kind of feel confident about the messaging, and that it's not evil. It's coming directly from those people. Now, a lot of times, not a lot of the times, some of the time, even words from other languages come through that the reader doesn't even know. Like, they don't know a language. Like, I'm getting these words that I don't even know what they are. And they'll say the words the best of their ability, and they'll realize, oh, that's my native language, and that's what, this is what it means, And those kind of things are really cool, because how would they ever be able to just sort of make that up in their mind and have it mean something, right? It's not going to be possible, I don't think. Important case studies and research. Jeffrey Long from the NDERF, large public database of thousands of first-hand NDE accounts. Again, that's Jeffrey Long. You might want to write that down. You might get your notebook out right now, because I'm going to kind of rattle off a few of these, and I'll share them. I'll share some of this information on the chat within the feed after the live is over. So Jeffrey Long from NDERF and PubMed Central, I think he's on there too, but it's www.nderf.org. You can check that out. It's pretty cool. You've got International Association for Near-Death Studies, so if you want to see what universities and folks have kind of looked into and come to the determination that this is interesting enough to at least look at it and study it, that is IANDS.org, IANDS.org, International Association for Near-Death Studies. And you've got Pim van Lommel from Lancet from 2001. These are a little bit older. study. It's a prospective study of cardiac arrest survivors reporting NDE phenomena. So this is focusing primarily on cardiac arrest stuff. So that's at the Lancet and PubMed as well. So if you go to the Lancet, if you search for the Lancet Pim Van Lommel, and you should be able to find his stuff. And then you've got Raymond Moody from the Pioneer Researcher. He's a pioneering researcher and author of Life After Life, popularized the modern study of NDEs. So that's an older one again, but it's some great stuff. Lifeafterlife.com is the website, lifeafterlife.com, Raymond Moody. You have Pam Reynolds, the famous surgical NDE claim. That's the one where she gets into detail about the procedure and the different things they were doing to her, and remembering and being able to recite all of that after she had her NDE. Widely discussed and popular in academic circles, it's a case often referenced in different studies. Excuse me. We have Kenneth Ring, early NDE researcher, very early on. Work on out-of-body experiences as well, not just with near-death experience, but in other ways, I think, if I remember correctly. Don't mark my words on that. I don't remember all the things I've looked into, but I think that was also studying just regular out-of-body people that claim to be able to just leave their body and travel, and they call it in the astral plane, and then come back. They're not going to heaven in that case. They can go down the street to a convenience store and then come back. I mean, who the heck knows? Whatever they want to do. Evidence of verifiable perceptions in that Kenneth Ring study. So it's www.kenring.org. So it's KENRING.org. So check that one out. We've got Critical Scrutiny, which is the critique of Eben Alexander's Proof of Heaven, and the issues raised by investigative reporters, skeptics, and scientists debate interpretation and quality and data quality. So they're coming at it from a scientific perspective, and it's important to do that too, because we want to be objective about everything and kind of look and see where we can poke holes in some of these theories and see if maybe this is just something the brain makes up or whatever. But I don't know. With mediumship, I really think that would be hard to prove that it's something the brain makes up when they're pulling facts and figures that they should never have access to. Some of these things they pull back are things that nobody would have ever known because it was personal between those two people. Nobody else knew in this life. So it's not possible. Definitions and short glossary. So the terms people might not know are kami is a spirit phenomenon or divine presence that can inhabit places, objects, ancestors, force of nature, or deities. It's a broad term used in Japanese religion and folklore. So when they say that the kami spirit came for me, it's just like another deity in a way, but it's a little bit different of a concept. So if you look up kami in Shinto, I think of the Shinto faith or the belief or whatever it is in Japan, that could be an interesting thing to start looking into. And then, like I said before, the Bodhisattva, which I can't really say very good, and the Mahayana Buddhism as an enlightened being who postpones final enlightenment to help others. So they postpone their final enlightenment to help others. So they're still here doing the work instead of moving on, in a sense. So they're those in-between guides, between here and the afterlife. The psychopomp, a lot of these things are like really hard to pronounce. I've never even tried to pronounce them outwardly. When you read a word, it's a whole different thing, but when you're trying to read some of these Indian or Asian sort of words and deities, it's a little bit hard to pronounce. But they call it a charon or an anubis, and it's a form of like an angel. It's kind of like an angel spirit that escorts or guides souls during transition between the life and death. Oh Oh boy, Psycho Pump. That's the word. I have no idea how to say that. I'm totally butchering that, I'm sure. The Yama, that's an easy one to say. That's the Hindu god, and we talked about this already. I'm just going over it again to reinforce. A god associated with death and the dispensation of the dead. The Shinigami, and of course the life review. So on to the next section. We're going to talk about, let's see. Okay, so here's a couple of links or websites for first-person interviews, research that that has balanced discussion. So the NDERF. Did we talk about this already? Yes, we did. We already covered that. I must have slipped back on the thing here. Hold on for a second. Gotta get back into my. There's a lot of things to cover, so I want to make sure I don't cover the same things twice. Okay, so here we go. So we're getting into some of the channels now. So let me copy. Oh, why is that link not clickable? Oh, here we go. I'm having a hard time getting that to be clickable. Hold on, I'll just grab the link itself and just paste it in. Copy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show a couple of these channels next that I think are fantastic and worth your while looking into. But before I do that, I'm going to switch over to the browser and grab some of these channels. So Anthony Chin is literally got, I think, hundreds of them in here. I'm not really sure. I don't know if he cycles them in and out or not, but there's a pretty good long list of videos on his channel, and each one of these has different experiencers of near-death experiences, but he also has some documentaries in there, and some researchers and some skeptics and different kind of things. So he has the long video, the shorts, and the podcasts. Well, he only has one podcast, but has a lot of shorts and a few posts in there. But if you follow Anthony Chin on YouTube, you'll always get the latest updates, and his stuff is just top notch. He just basically lets the people tell their story from the beginning to the end without interruption. Sometimes I think he's had interjected once in a while, but for the most part, he's just letting people tell their stories without any sort of filtering or editing or anything. Unless a person is like having such a hard time, they're brought to too many tears, and he may cut and then go back. But for the most part, this is a fantastic channel to watch. So it's always the same style, so the intro is the same. It's great stuff.
My name is Landon Dennis. I'm 36 years old, and I'm from St. George, Utah. I grew up in the most amazing, wonderful, loving home with wonderful parents, but we lived in this house. It had ghosts and dark entities that would mess with me. I remember the first time it happened, I would go to bed at night, and all of a sudden
So you can see that, it'll get into his near-death experience later, but he's talking about the early influence of spiritual things in his life, of unexplainable things, and how it relates to his near-death experience and the things and the lessons that he's learned. So it gets into some different areas, all kinds of different areas. So there's a lot of really, really interesting stories on this channel. So I recommend everyone go to Anthony Chin Productions and really check out every one of those videos. In fact, you'll get into binge watching those at some point, I'm sure, if you start getting into it. Then the next channel I wanted to recommend, obviously, is the more modern one, which is, whoops, hold on, I'm going to grab the link here. Let's go here. This is going to be the Love Covered Life podcast, where, let's see, my near-death experience. Oh, that's her near-death experience. So she's had near-death experience as well. So she started a channel based on the fact that she had her experience, and she knew that all kinds of other people wanted to tell their stories, and she's got lots of great, good quality ones too. And she's come to the determination, same as I have, about the fact that there isn't any one real God necessarily as far as these experiences are concerned. Like the story is always different for each individual as far as what they're shown, and the role that Jesus plays oftentimes is a little bit different than what religion would say. But this is just for your own research and coming to your own determinations. And then, like I mentioned before, the IANDS and the NDERF websites are always good. Let me see if I can copy this one. Let's go here. International Association for Near-Death Studies. So this is a whole website dedicated to that here. So you can kind of do your own research and kind of learn a little bit more about it and experience and listen to more or read more articles and stories. And they have a media section here, so you can kind of explore the website here. And then there's the NDERF. Let me see if I can copy the link on this. Copy the hyperlink location. Go here. So the Near-Death Experience Research Foundation. So these are real, objective studies, that they're doing, different kinds of groups or subgroups. They have a Facebook group. So if you get into it by watching some of these, good quality interviews where it's not sort of pushing a narrative, it's just letting people tell the story. That if a channel is first of all looks electronic or AI, and it's pushing a narrative, and it's always the same story, and they're always steering you away from certain things in the esoteric community, that it's definitely it's a fake channel. They're just trying to push a narrative. It's not a real deal. And then if you want some individual amazing stories here, you could work with like some of the more well-known ones. Let me see if I can find that's not the right link. Hold on. Copy the hyperlink location. Here we go. Back to there.
As a therapist myself, I know how important it is to be able to have.
Let's gotta get past the ads here. Hold on a second. Dismiss. Oh, so this is also an Anthony Chin. I actually didn't know that he had her on here, but this is Tammy Lee Anderson. So this one here is a very popular, well-known story. So it gets into, and this is a fairly long interview. It runs 45 minutes.
It's hard to understand, but on the bigger picture, everything is perfect. And so as I asked these questions, I just got this download, and I had all this light coming into me, like the little darts of light, different colors, shooting into my body, into my mind, into my heart. And it was just like going through this light coming through it. And each piece of light, it was information, it was knowing, it was understanding. It's like every cell of your body. But I didn't have a body, I was just light. I wasn't aware of having a body at that time. I was aware of just being part of the light. And the experience is more real than real. A dream or a hallucination is very discombobulated. It's disorganized. You might remember parts of it, but it can be very unsettling. This experience is more real than real. It's home, and I remember it like yesterday. The memory of this doesn't go away. It's like I can breathe back into the light anytime I wish. In fact, I live this. I mean, there's not a day when I breathe back into that light.
So, so these stories are just, they'll draw you in from your heart, and it's just super amazing to just sit and listen to. You can even just get the feel from just those few words there, And they have nothing, they're not selling anything, they're just trying to tell their story, okay? So some of them might have written a book, but the good majority of them have not. I mean, most of them haven't, actually, because that's not their role in life. They end up coming back into this life and doing different things and having a different focus on things. So the next one I want to show is Bruce Van Natta, and this is another interesting story here. Is that the right one? Let's see. Yeah, here we go.
My name's Bruce Van Natta. I live in Wisconsin, and I didn't have a super spiritual upbringing or background. Both of my parents had been severely abused as children and neglected as kids. My parents medicated their inner woundedness and pain with drinking and drugs sometimes. So I just grew up in what people call dysfunctional home. Verbal abuse, physical abuse, and made a lot of bad choices as a young guy, trying to medicate the inner woundedness and pain. Looked for all the stuff that the world has that says will make you feel better. Drugs, alcohol, sex, and raced motorcycles, big game hunting, lots of hobbies and stuff. And we started a business in 2003 where I did on-site diesel repair. I got married. We started having kids. Then we started this business. And that was actually how the accident happened. So my accident actually happened in 2006. I was called into this logging business because this logging truck had a coolant leak. It was leaking antifreeze. There was another mechanic. His name was Leonard, and I actually had known Leonard for a long time, and so I was working with him on this Ford Chevy Peterbilt, and I was just down to the last couple tools left when Leonard came and tapped me on the shoulder, and he said, "Hey, before you go," he said, "I'd like you to look at one more thing." And I looked up at the clock on the wall, and I remember it said 6:10 p.m. I left my house that morning at 6 a.m. It took me an hour to get there. So when he asked me, he wanted to look at something else, I'm looking at the clock and I'm doing the math, and I'm thinking I didn't want to because I just wanted to go home and eat supper. And he could see the wheels turning in my head, and so he said, "Oh, I don't want you to stay late." He said, "I just want you to look at one more thing." He said, "There's a dirty spot on the front of the engine that's seeping oil." He asked me if I'd look underneath the truck at this one more thing. I look underneath the truck, and I saw that he had jacked up that truck to remove that front wheel with a bottle jack, but unfortunately he had not used any safety equipment. So the truck has been on the jack for 3 days. It's been running for like 15 or 20 minutes. He had just crawled up from underneath the truck, and I looked underneath there. I saw that it wasn't on safety equipment. I saw that it was just on a jack, and I thought, oh, no big deal. It must be good because it's been on there for 3 days. So I rolled underneath the truck, feet first, on my back. Where I ended up, the bumper was just back behind my head. The running engine was just above me. And the axle that has the 10 to 12,000 pounds of weight was just a little bit above my belly, just a couple inches above me. So I'm looking at the bottom of the engine. I figured out what I thought that the leak was. And so I yelled at the Leonard and I said, "Shut the truck off. I don't need it running anymore for this." So he got up inside the truck to shut it off. When he did, the whole truck shifted above me because the air suspension of the truck, when he got in it, it shifted the whole thing, shifted the whole truck. And so it's normal. But then I saw movement in the peripheral vision of my left eye.
You get the idea, so I'm not going to give you the whole story. You're going to have to go watch it yourself. All right, so the next one. I know. You're getting into it, right? You're getting into it. So that's the whole point of this whole show. Just trying to introduce this idea of doing a little bit of research and kind of figuring out where you stand with something like that, It's good. I'm going to check the chat here just to see where is the feed. Oh, there we go. There's the feed. Everything's going good still. How long have we been live here? Gosh, I don't even know. Anyway, so So let's grab the next one. Copy location, bring it over to here. Bada bing. Alright, let's see what we got on this one. This one is another popular story too. The near-death experience of Peggy Robinson, which has 736 comments with 256,000 views only 10 months ago. Okay, so very, very impactful stories.
My name is Peggy Robinson. I was raised in Southeast Ohio, and when I was 5 years old, we had moved out to the country outside of Marietta, and I was sitting alone in my room on the floor playing with my Barbie dolls, and my mom come in and said, "It's hot outside, let's go swimming." And so I hurried, got my little bikini on, and my brother, he's 2 years older than me, he was in his trunks in no time. And so we got to the pond down below our hill, and John, my brother, he went clear to the farthest end of the pond, and he dove in and started doing laps. My mom had said that her and my sister would be down after a bit. So as I'm wading in, I saw a board floating, and I thought, I bet I could use that as a raft. So I laid my belly on it, and I went swimming straight out to the middle. And I said, "Hey, John, look at me." And he swam real fast out to me. And as he's almost to me, I thought, oh no, he always takes my toys. He's going to take my board. And that's just what he did. He grabbed that board, he put his own belly on it, and was doing his laps on the board. So now I'm in the middle of the pond, and I can't swim. So I look for my middle sister, Terry, my mom, to look out for me, and they're not there. Like nobody knows I'm in trouble. I'm trying real hard to keep my head above water, and I'm thinking I made a big mistake coming out here. I should know how to swim. I should know how to tread water. I can't do anything. And it wasn't long at all that my little face was no longer above the water, but under the water. And I'm dropping down deeper. It's muddy brown, and I just wanted to get above and get some oxygen. I'm scared. I'm screaming. Then all of a sudden, I'm at the ceiling of the kitchen, and I'm looking down, and I see my mom and my sister. They're slowly getting things out of the cabinet to bring down, like for a picnic, and I feel their emotions. I don't hear anything like earthly, worldly. I'm just sensing, feeling their mood and their emotions. And then I'm back in the water, and I'm continually struggling. So I think my soul must have left my body for a moment and come back. But now my throat hurts so bad, it feels like it's going to burst wide open, and I can't take it anymore. But then it's like that calm feeling you have when you wake up from a nap. That relaxed feeling like everything's fine with the world. And I thought at 5 years old, thinking, my parents lied to me. There's no such thing as drowning. What was I afraid of? Because I'm not struggling to breathe. I can breathe. I'm fine. And the water's no longer that dark, scary, muddy brown where I couldn't see. It's now a bright white, transparent green. So I think, oh, okay, this is cool. I can't wait to tell my older siblings there's no such thing as drowning. Then I'm saying,
All right, so again, this is just amazing stories. You have to listen to each one of these and really kind of, feel from your heart what you feel is the truth about all of this, and what are the commonalities between all of these stories. Okay, so we're going to get on to, we've looked at a few good, channels, and we looked at, there's a bunch of them out there. But you have to be careful when you're exploring these channels, because if you actually look deeper, you start to see dogma built into some of these channels too, where some of the channels will get infiltrated with some of these scammers and people that are just not really, they don't have real experiences. They have an agenda of some sort. So you always, you always have to be listening to your heart and kind of following what you feel is right. So, some of the ones that we want to look at critically, let's say, right, and support. I'm not labeling specific people or fraud here or anything like that. The safe move is to identify patterns and show examples of content that uses fear, dogma, or clickbait to push one faith-based interpretation, or to sell videos, books, that kind of stuff. And not that, people that have these experiences, some of them have had multiple near-death experiences and wrote books about how they survived all of them, and they want to tell their story that way. That's fine. But if you're seeing like a negative or fear-based thing behind it, because the vast majority of these stories, 80 to 90% of them or more, always have a positive slant. There's always a positive slant on even the negative stuff. So the list that I'm going to show is going to contain some actual video channels that present hellish or highly sensitive NDE testimonies on the topic, and many of these are compiled into clickbait playlists, and they use them as examples to show how NDE testimony can be weaponized into fear narratives. Okay, so this one is a Christian testimony here, and I'm going to show you the difference here. You probably get the vibe for it right away, how this is. Oops. Copy hyperlink. Okay, here we go. Let's go down here.
I was terrified that if I went all in and still failed to the
Waiting for the commercial.
We say today I'm one of the head coaches at
I did the heroin, the cocaine, the morphine, the speed, the MDA, the THC, the mescaline. And I'm sure a lot of viewers would recognize the names of these drugs if they go back that far, including some grass and hash occasionally, but that was just kind of a filler.
I would assume some of that might have had an influence over his experience, in a sense that his fears and his shame, and you can tell by the body language, that is nothing like this person's sitting back, they're calm, they have their hands open. This man has his head down, he's not looking anyone in the eyes, he's got a very tense forehead, his jaw's not relaxed. Everything is just sort of off, so you can kind of tell there's a huge difference between all the other ones I've been showing you, how people are just sitting back and recalling, and where they're looking is not up and to the left or up and to the right into the imaginary areas. They're just looking either straight forward or in a normal way. If you actually study body language, you kind of know the gist. Now body language isn't 100% science either, but there are some common threads you can tell when people are lying, or they're sort of pushing a narrative of some sort.
My drug of choice was speed, and that's how I overdosed. But just before all of that, in them 10 years, I had to provide for my habit. And a lot of it was just doing things and stealing and robbing. I've done time for robberies, and I did break-in enterings and other things that I'm not proud of, but
all drug related.
All drug related.
Supporting the habit.
Support the habit.
The addiction.
The addiction. In 1971, I was at a place where I had cause to celebrate. And I met my brother, Tom, and we went into the Parkdale Hotel. Back in them days, out front of the Parkdale Hotel, you always had a cab, police, and ambulances just sitting there, because that was that style in them days. Anyway, we went inside, and gee, we're celebrating. I'm having a couple of beers and so on. At this time, I'm not a born-again Christian yet. And so sitting there, I get up to go to the washroom after a couple of beers, and in the washroom I hear this voice that says, "Why don't you take some of them pills that you got on you and really have a glow?" Now on me I had 60 Valium, and they were high potency. One would knock you out and make you sleep for a day or so.
Okay, you see where this is going. It's kind of like, in the moment of his experience, all of this drug use and everything obviously had an influence over his experience. That's just the way I feel about it. So, very questionable. And the body language, even though he's not on drugs, at least I think he's not on drugs, there's definitely a difference between how he's conveying the message, not as much with confidence even though he's supposedly a born-again Christian and has already been forgiven. It's like something's off with the body language there. So you have to use your own interpretation and your own feelings about some of these stories. And 99.9% of the time, they don't talk about, oh, we went to hell and we had the review there. No, that hardly ever happens. It's usually only a Christian-based theme that I've seen that kind of pushes that narrative. And then we got another clickbait one here. Let's see. We'll show you this one here, which definitely is not the greatest.
This is not something easy to talk about. I can understand why a lot of pastors don't talk about this or don't facilitate sermons about this. It's not easy to talk about hell, but it's.
Oh my God, I can't even. Sorry for more than 5 minutes here. It's just the energy of this is so off and so crazy, you know. Like if it was that profound, this is definitely clickbait. So you just gotta. Let's listen to a little bit more of it.
Important that we do because so many people are going there. I was reading the statistic just today. I think they said 110 billion people, something like that, have been born. And the Bible says many people do not go to heaven. Many people do not walk the narrow road.
The Bible says it. What does your heart say? I'm sorry, I can't. This is that hellfire brimstone like mentality, you know. It's too much. It just don't resonate with it. I never will. It's just insane to me.
Was I knew what God the Father was doing. And he took his robe right at his neckline and he tore it. I'd never seen that done before.
Oh my God, dramatic. I mean, you can watch the rest of these. I mean, I can't even stomach. I just can't stomach it. It's just, I get the wrong vibe and just the body language is off, the sweating and the nervousness, you know. I mean, it's just so obvious that, you know, and look at the hands clenched. You know, hands are clenched. You know, shoulders are up. That's a protective stance, you know. It's like the body language is just off. He's buying into it, but because, you know, they can make it convincing. But if you watch the difference between the body language there and someone telling the story that's just relaxed and just kind of recalling something real, you know, it's a whole different ball game than this body language. This body language, you know, I mean, it's night and day.
It was done the first time. And that time,
whoa.
what it meant was, I'm done with you.
Oh yeah, God's going to throw you away. You know, I'm sorry. The Christian, this is only happening in the Christian, from what I've seen, though. I'm not saying there aren't other religions pushing the hellfire and brimstone thing. I'm just saying I've only ever seen this with the Christian faith. So, and there seems to be a big fear campaign right now to push that narrative, just to bring people back, because they realize there are a lot of problems with organized religion. Not that, you know, Christianity is bad, and no one person is you know, necessarily what do I want to say? You know, the faith in and of itself is not bad. It's just the dogma wrapped up in it is not great. But we find, if you actually look at these and you watch and you compare them, you'll see there's a different total feel between the two.
Welcome to Christian Tales TV. If you're joining...
And they call it tales because they're not real. I'm sorry. Fairy tales, you know, tales. I'm sorry, I'm being a little bit biased when it comes, because I've actually looked at a lot of these, and I've watched them all on both sides, and I just don't resonate. It doesn't hit my heart the way that the other ones do, and it's just not the same.
who was shown various aspects of hell, including many individuals who identified as Christians but ultimately fell short of heaven due to their actions. Please watch the entire video to capture the essence of his profound experience. Here is the story as Moses sent it to us. Hello, my name is Moses. I want to share my eye-opening experience of the afterlife, an experience that dramatically altered my understanding of everything I believed.
Oh God, I'm sorry. He died and saw all these Christians in hell. But they were only Christians in hell? See, the logic doesn't even make sense. Because there should be a combination of Christians and non-Christians in hell.
This realm, more revelations followed. Each soul's story was a testament to a life of contradictions. People who appeared devout but whose actions belied their claims of faith. I saw a young man who attended church every Sunday yet indulged in vices throughout the week.
So this is a faceless story. So stuff like this especially, so you got the body language problems, but you also have these manufactured AI style things you got to be careful of, the deep fakes now that they're putting together these videos and using a computer generated voice and animation that is just stock video footage that they slam together and they say, well, here's a story. Well, where's the person telling the story? Where are they? Right? They're not even confident enough to tell the story themselves. And then here's another one. Let's see. What she saw is terrifying. These are abundant and packaged in a spike emotion. Yeah. So these are all designed. Yeah, because none of these style YouTubes have any sort of hope in them. It's all about, you're just this evil sinner and you're going to go to hell, basically, unless you follow the system that they put together. Here we go. Let's see, not that guy. Oh, this did not go. Okay, so heaven and hell testimonies. Oh yeah, I see what I'm doing here. This is a query. So if we go to, I saw my mom in hell. Okay, yeah, this kind of stuff.
I was standing on the edge of Hades, and where Lazarus was and the rich man. And then I saw before me, I was standing on the edge of Hades, and where Lazarus.
You can sense the arrogance. I'm sorry.
Here's what you have wrong about heaven.
I was standing on the edge of Hades.
What else we got here? Where are the who dies and goes to hell? Now on her channel here, let's see. Is it this one? Not Anthony. Let's see. This one here. On this channel, let's see. She had a recent one. Let me just see if I can find it here. Possible. Eternal hell is logically impossible. Okay, here we go.
Hell is good. Okay, hell is good. Well, hopefully there will be some good supporting evidence to back it. So important and here, other than her fire where souls, so they must punish their child's.
That's not the one. There is a video that I should have put together, found that she just posted that gave better examples of the NDE scam. Here it is, right here.
Check this out. I'm going to show you how
Let's spend some time looking at this one, because this is the perfect example of when when they're trying to scam people into believing a certain narrative about heaven and hell. All right. She does a fantastic job on her channel putting these together. Again, just another person who just lets people talk and doesn't, and then does the statistics on hundreds and thousands of these videos that she's watched, because she's had her own near-death experience and knows absolutely that there isn't this hell place that they talk about.
Fake NDE content that has been popping up all over YouTube, and thousands of people are taking it seriously. The rise of AI generated content. stories that are fake from start to finish. The story is fake, the person telling the story is fake, and people are falling for it. And so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you what a couple of these channels look like, what their content looks like, and how you can avoid being hoodwinked by these channels.
I'll fast forward this up to that spot because she gets into a lot of discussion over it, but let's get to right where she decides to show it.
That I'm going to share with you. It's called Hidden Bible Secrets. You can see that it has 10.4K subscribers right now. It is quickly growing because not long ago it had 500 subscribers. Now, if we look through the content here, we can see that it's all coming from more of a Christian lens, fear-based Christian style content, which is the first red flag. Now, no offense to Christians. There are Christians who have had NDEs who I've had on my channel, but the vast majority of NDEs are not Christian-based. If you know what I mean. Like, Jesus may show up and give a message, or a Christian may die and have a hellish experience and then be rescued by Jesus. But the vast majority of NDEs are coming from a non-religious perspective. People from various religions have NDEs. I've had a Buddhist on my channel. There's a well-known NDE-er, Renee Pazaro, who is from the Baha'i faith. You'll talk to Mormons, Jews, Hindus, pretty much any religion you can think of. People have had the NDE, but usually the NDE kind of shifts their perspective and has them coming back with a more open-minded viewpoint. That's not to say that there aren't people out there who have had very Christian-based NDEs. And you can find those on channels such as Randy K's. I still have my suspicions about channels like those. Like, why do you have NDE channels that are only interviewing and promoting NDEs that come from a Christian worldview when it's a very small percentage of that range of NDEs that are out there? Having said that, if you find a channel that is all Christian-based NDEs. I mean, I died and Jesus showed me why staying up late weakens your spirit. I died and Jesus reveals what happens spiritually when couples live together. I died and Jesus told me 7 ways Christians waste their salvation. I died and Jesus showed me why millions are deceived by yoga and meditation. I mean, this channel could have been created by a Christian pastor. You don't see this kind of stuff in real NDE. I mean, this is anecdotal evidence, but I've read and listened to hundreds, if not thousands. I've interviewed so many people at this point, and I've never heard like specific sins like this being called out, like cohabiting before marriage or staying up late. If anything is called out in the life review, if any specific sins, so to speak, are called out, it's always a lack of love. It's always you could have showed more love in this moment. Look how this action of yours made this person feel. So that's the first red flag. So let's take a closer look. Let's click on one of these. Try to find one that has a few more views here. Let's see. How about this one? I died and Jesus revealed the 4 foods Christians must avoid. I just want to take a break for a quick moment to thank you from the bottom of my heart for watching and supporting this channel. Okay, first obvious thing to point out is, can you see how robotic this AI voice sounds? And if you watch the man's facial expressions, it's clear that they're not natural. Also notice how there was a small clip of his face and it jumped right to B-roll. For those who aren't familiar, B-roll is when a stock video is... Okay, first obvious thing to point out.
I guess I kind of can't seem to target that. Oh, here we go. There we go.
Okay, first obvious thing to point out is, can you see?
My devotion became more of a Sunday tradition than a daily walk.
Okay, here's a couple key things to notice. If it sounds like the person in the video is reading off of a script, it is most likely AI generated content. Real people, when they talk, there are pauses, there are ums and ahs. Although a lot of that is edited out, by either a really good editor or AI editing technology like Descript, the program that I use. All pauses, ums, and ahs can be edited out. However, the person will still have emotion in their voice, and it won't sound like they're reading off a script. The language isn't going to be as fancy when it's a real person speaking, and there will be emotion in the voice. So 2 telltale signs of AI content is like a flat reading, and when it sounds too formal. Done the interviews, created beautiful videos, and let's take a look at one of their videos. How about this most recent one here? I was dragged to hell until this happened.
This enormous fear and terror came across me.
So right away you can see the use of B-roll. A lot of podcasters use B-roll immediately when the video starts to make it interesting to keep people watching.
Oh, please. And then the next thing I knew, I saw this little teeny tiny light, like a pinpoint of a light. And I started moving towards the light. My name is Christine Harrington, and I want to preface.
Now we can see the face of the person speaking. Let's give it a minute and see what we can gather here.
First, that I am a Catholic. I was born a Catholic. And the reason why I want to preface with that is because it ties in with my near-death experience story. So knowing...
We've flashed to B-roll again. Let's see how long this lasts before her face shows again.
That I was born a Catholic, I moved away from the church in the late 70s after my divorce. And to say that I lived pretty promiscuous life is somewhat true. And I'll just say I wasn't living life according to the Catholic Church. So I found myself pregnant. And this was in my early 30s. And the father of the child said, get rid of it. And at the time, my parents were not supportive at all. So I went through my first abortion. Then after I left him...
So the point she's trying to make here is that they do these long B-roll covers to not just keep it interesting, but to sort of hide the expressions as she's telling the story. So you can't read the body language as much. So yeah, there's a lot wrong with stories like that. And there's a lot wrapped up in the dogma of the faith that they're in.
A few years later, I found myself living with a man, and I was pregnant again, and I had a second abortion. I know.
Here we are. We're 1 minute and 34 seconds in, and we're seeing her face again. This is how a legitimate channel will typically go about using B-roll. Now, if we scroll through here, we've got more B-roll. Jumping back to her face at 4 minutes, and the video jumps back between B-roll and her face. The reason why it's a dead giveaway when you only see one small portion of the person's face at the beginning and then it never shows again is because they have to AI generate that person talking. And that's tricky to do because AI is still learning how to get the right facial expressions, the right voice tone, all of these things. And so they're gonna use the AI fake person for as little time as possible on the screen. Will it stay that way for very long with as fast as AI is improving? I don't know, but that's where we're at right now. Now let's...
So not only do they have the fake stories and the computer generated voices, but the deep faking is just out of control out there. So if you don't have just a pure interview done this way, you can't fully read the person as they're telling their entire story. And you can't pick out the nuances of a real person versus some AI generated character. So yeah, that's the biggest thing I wanted to cover on that channel. So her channel is a fantastic channel to go and watch. I subscribe to that one. I subscribe to both that one and Anthony Cheen. And to me, those two channels are enough consumption, because I've had prior experiences with all the other channels and doing my investigations and whatnot. So why are these types of channels problematic, right? They cherry pick just the hellish accounts. They never say anything good about any of the experiences. They're trying to really push that narrative of hell and this bad, narrative. And they amplify the fear narratives and sometimes pressure viewers to adopt a single doctrine interpretation. They also often omit methodological context, so they don't actually give you full context for the story. So it's more focusing on the fear aspects and how they can kind of scare you straight, or if you will. It's almost like a Scared Straight series to bring you back to support their enterprise. Okay, so let's see what else we got here. So we talked about watching out for the robotic voice channels, the AI, all that kind of stuff, or the even low effort channels with too much the B-roll, like she was talking about. Let's see what else we got here. I'm just going through some notes here, just trying to make sure I cover all the points on that. Okay, so another one of the things you can look for is that by the rules, if something is AI or synthetic or whatever, you're supposed to put the label on it, right? A lot of these channels don't do that, so they're trying to push it as if it were real, as opposed to, when you actually find out the person lifts their hand and they have 6 fingers, or they have, another arm came out of their back suddenly in one of the video slides, and it's like, oh, something's not right with that. If you get a quick flash and something doesn't look right. So you have to really look deep at the AI stuff, because sometimes it's very convincing for people. Let's see. Okay. I'm going to skip some of this in the interest of saving time here. Okay, so here's a list of ways to spot fakes, right, on some of those channels that we just watched. Again, the robotic voice, the monotone voice, so anything that sounds synthetic, or even like that guy when he's trying to tell the story, it's just very somber and depressing. But at the end of a real NDE, there's always a lesson, because if they went to hell and they came back, I don't think you're supposed to go to hell. If you go to hell, you're supposed to stay there. That's what I'd think. But whatever. So, repetitive thumbnails, titles across many videos that have the same template, so everything kind of looks the same. It's like cookie cutter kind of thing across all the different videos. No real interviews, only just text read over stock footage. So like the one I showed you there, where it was just the text being displayed over some kind of stock footage with no real person behind the scenes there telling the story. That's also a dead giveaway. No clear sources for the testimonies, no real people that you can look up. You can't check their background, you can't do anything. It's like you can't really trace it back to anything real. So to me, I throw all that stuff out, because if I can't validate it, if I can't go and then look that person up and find that they've been telling their story for 10, 15 years or whatever, or even if it's a news story and I can check their background and know that, yes, they grew up in a small town in Alabama and they used to be, work at the local pharmacy in town and whatever. Like, if I can't look that up and figure out who they are as a person and validate what they're saying, then I don't bother, because this is just too much. Too many narratives being pushed out there, too many lies, too many things that are corrupting the town square, if you will. Let's see. Heavy moralizing too. That's like if you're focusing too much on moralization and not enough on the lessons and things that you learn. Some of the things are not necessarily moral lessons. They're just everyday things that we need to learn to become more aware, becoming more kind and more aware of the level of kindness we're employing in the different things and the purpose that we came here for. Looking out for outrage and people slamming their fists against the table and trying to scare people or shock them into the proof of hell and damnation. Those are dead giveaways, in my opinion. Channel has been recently rebranded or reused to farm old content. So if their branding is not working and they have to rebrand it because it's just simply people are seeing through the garbage, you might see that kind of thing going on over and over again because they're trying to rebrand it because no one's buying what they're saying. So I guess that's really not much of a threat if they just sort of keep trying to put it out there in different ways. Okay, so if you want to do deep research on things to find out if the video is fake, there are tools called InVid, where InVid-We Verify, it's a plugin of some kind that you can extract video keyframes, reverse image search, check metadata and origins, all that stuff, to find out if it is an original thing or if it's been put together with tools, with AI tools, whatever. There's ways that you can figure that out if you want to become an investigator, if you wanted to do that kind of research. But a lot of it's just intuition. You don't really need to get that deep with it. What else? So YouTube synthetic content disclosures and reporting tools. If a video is realistic but undiscloses synthetic content, YouTube policies provide reporting routes so you can report. And we should actually do that too. We should have them do the work of trying to keep a lot of the fake stuff off of there, the stuff that you can prove that's fake. At least have them looking at it, right? Because it's just a lot of garbage out there that we have to sift through, unfortunately. Wired or news reports on cheap fakes. Use these to see examples of low effort, high outrage model. So, deepfake detection services. There's research tools, Meaver or deepfake detector, academic toolkits for research. Now, some people are better at sort of identifying these things visually, and you can kind of see the flow of a real video. If you watch enough real video close enough and you compare that to something that's AI generated, there's always a little bit of a glitch. I don't know if they'll ever perfect it to where they can totally fool people, but it just doesn't look natural to me, and I can always pick it out. But if you want to double verify it, there are tools out there, and it's called Meaver, deepfake detector. If you just do a little bit of searching, probably you can use AI to find some of these tools. Just kind of ask it to list, what are some of the tools I can use to verify, download a video and then verify if it's real or not. Let's see. So, in order to do the reporting, you want to look for interview sources and full interviews, not just clipped or readovers. You want the whole, end-to-end video like we have on some of the ones that we saw in Anthony Cheen's video. And if it's absent, flag it, report it, do whatever you need to do. Reverse search a frame of a video, so you could stop it on a frame and then do a screenshot, and you can use that InVid tool to do that, or you can even just do a Google reverse search just to see if there's stock footage that it's using, and it will pick that up, and you could say, oh, this was just downloaded, it's all fake. You can kind of do that. And then if it was AI generated, it might pick that up too. Let's see, check the channel's about page, other videos and uploaded history. Many cheap fake channels show sudden bursts of content. So they produce so much content, so much fake content with the AI tools that you'll see a rapid increase in traffic for those channels initially, and then they kind of catch on and they start to de-rank them. check comments for first-hand corroboration. Like, people, if there's hundreds and thousands of people all corroborating, oh, I heard this story, I've done the research, blah, 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 and here's giving you some references, whatever, you can kind of look into it a little bit deeper. But if you're not finding any of that, and you're seeing a lot of people saying, oh, this is just AI, it's garbage, whatever, junk, that's also another helpful thing to do. Just kind of see what other people think about it. What research have they done? You don't have to do it all yourself. If the voice seems synthetic, like some of the ones we showed you, then it's probably not a real NDE experience. Use YouTube's how this content was made disclosure if absent, but the content seems synthetic. Consider reporting it. All right, so the next section we want to cover is, let's see. Okay, we already covered the Near-Death Experience Research Foundation website, the International Association of Near-Death Studies, and the Pim von Lommel Near-Death Experience in Survivors of Cardiac Arrest. So we already covered that. Authors, books, reviews. Some of these are good ones, I guess. The Ray Moody. Oh, we already talked about that. Why am I on that section again? Let's see here. Practical recommendations for you. Okay. All right. I guess we can come to a close on this. I just really wanted to show you, the difference between some of those videos. But here's some practical recommendations for everyone on how to, things to look into. Look into the Anthony Cheen website. Look into the Love Covered Life site, and look into some of the other things we covered. The cross-cultural, deities, and some of the stories in the NDEs. Kind of pay attention, take notes, and when you're watching these videos, and kind of see the commonalities and note them down, and kind of say, well, this story in this religion said this, and this story in this religion said that, and they're all kind of saying the same thing. That's what I tend to focus on. What are the commonalities across all these stories, and how can we come together in our faith and our belief, and what is my heart telling me? Not what some book is telling me or some religion necessarily. But okay, so here's the final on with some warnings and some ethics. Obviously, we want to respect the testimony, so, regardless, right? If we feel like it's real, some of it can be proven or backed in a way. I mean, everything that someone says is subjective, but when you have hundreds and thousands of people all saying the same thing, the stronger stories are the stories of hope and love and faith and learning. The ones that are religious based tend to be fearful more and hellish and damnation and all this other stuff. That's a whole different thing. So, focus on survivor stories often carry deep personal meaning. Even when contested scientifically, they matter for the person's life and ethics. So, you can look into the contentions and the different things, and science might say it's all in your head, but we all get to decide what we believe about something like that. And don't generalize from a handful of sensational examples. Like hellish NDE accounts exist but are the minority, and that is a fact. They've done university studies on all of these. They've followed as many as they can gather, and you can even ask AI itself and it will tell you, because AI is the culmination of almost all data being processed, and it knows the truth about that. The truth is that the NDE hellish accounts are the minority. Many researchers caution against proving a doctrine from a few extreme anecdotes, so be careful about that. Call out AI misuse. If a channel uses synthetic voices and repackages testimonies into fear content, point to YouTube's disclosure rules and consider reporting it. So that's pretty much it as far as what I wanted to cover tonight. But let me switch back to the browser real quick one last time. And again, show you the difference between these stories.
And I turned my head just in time to see that the jack, when he got in the truck and the truck shifted, the jack had slipped out and it was just barely touched.
You can see when the eyes bulge, there's a lot of emotion behind that. And you have every movement of the person is describing something real. So if you study body language, you know the difference between that and this. Okay, totally.
So I went in there.
You had 60.
I had 60 of them. And so I went into the washroom and I listened to the voice. So I put my hand into the sink in the washroom, took a couple of them and knocked them back. I went back out, had
leaning in and holding the hands on the lap like that and sort of slouching and not sitting up and leaning forward is a very aggressive, protective stance when it comes to telling the story. And when you looked at his face in the beginning when he's telling the story, how he's sort of full of this shame, yet he's this born-again Christian who's been forgiven. He understands everything now. He's been to hell and back, and yet he's still in this sort of miserable, like, energy. A lot of tension in the forehead, and it's like he's talking out of one side of his mouth here. I mean, this is just by reading the body language. If I looked at any video, it doesn't matter what he's talking about. If I see this kind of behavior in an interview, I know something's off. This is not right.
I was at a place where I had cause to celebrate. And I met my brother Tom, and we went into the Parkdale Hotel.
Looking up and to the right, that might be his left. Actually, this might be reversed. But it's like he's pulling the story. This is something that he's rehearsed a lot, it seems to me.
We tried everything, but
Sorry, commercial. That always does that one in the middle. There we go.
You're ready. You're open. You're willing.
Yes, the Lord had brought me to that point. Well, that was my brother.
Again, he never ever sits back. I'm already 3/4 away through this, testimony here. He's still leaning in. He's still not comfortable telling the story. It's like that is a whole different ball game from this and this. It's just sitting back with calm, reciting the story, understanding and feeling it, and the emotion is raw and real, not rehearsed and fake. So that's all I have for tonight. I just wanted to sort of bring that about and, I don't know, just bring it up for conversation. I had hoped in the future maybe we can get more people to come on to the show and participate and be part of the conversation. So as we go through, we'll probably do more and more of these. So I hope you enjoyed the show, and I will be, of course, cutting those up and popping them into TikTok as well. So we will see you next time on Get Esoteric with Rick Maki. And if I can find my exit, I'll be doing good. Here we go.